The Westclox Big Ben, Style 2. And the Westclox Baby Bins. From Style 1 to Style 7. And what's this? Why, it's the movements to the baby bins. We're going to try to take a look at the movements of the baby bin alarm clocks style 1 through 7, the most common movements. And I've set an alarm, actually several, to keep this video from being ludicrously long. So, let's begin. Let's start with the Style 1. There's two very common movements used in the Style 1. I'm talking about the movements made after 1919. And if we look at this early 20s Style 1 here, we'll see that the alarm and time wind in opposite directions. So here are two examples of movement that would be used in this clock. Neither one seemed to want to run at this moment. Oh, this one's deciding to go a little. They're slightly different movements. If you look at the shape of the pallet fork there on the verges, you see they're a little different. This one here is a slightly later movement than this one is. But they're both, I believe, 1919 and 1926 time frame. The alarm key, it uses a female key for the alarm that is left-hand threaded. And then the alarm is wound through a set of gears, and then the ratchet and click are mounted between the plates. This thing might want to run dial up, it looks like. Then there's a repeat mechanism. This is the repeat. If this will cooperate here, we'll run it a little bit and you can see the action of the repeat. So the alarm would be running under these conditions, and as the third wheel rotates, one revolution every 7.5 minutes roughly, the repeat lever falls into the low spots on that cam, and then the alarm would stop ringing. And as the clock runs, the repeat lever rises up, allows it to start ringing again, and once again it will ring until it falls back in the low spot. And that's how the repeat is made to function. There's the hook die on the end of the repeat lever, and it catches a tail, which is an extension of the alarm hammer verge. And that gives you your repeat function. So, and that's the dial side view of the movement. the alarm trip spring right here. Always see the back of the movement. So the way the clock disengages the repeat feature for steady is the setter on the top of the clock for the steady and repeat has a hook that catches this lever right here and lifts it up and forces it to stay off of the repeat cam, and thus it can't drop, and thus it cannot silence the alarm. So the later Style 1 movements, and this is also the same movement used in the Style 2. Basically the same except for the arrangement of the winding. There is an idler now inserted between the winding key gear and the mainspring gear, so the key turns clockwise in winding and is right hand threaded. And now the click is located on the back plate instead of between the plates. If we turn this one dial side up, there's the repeat mechanism again. This is a pretty good running movement here. The balance wheel's got a reasonable motion to it. Of course, it's not present on here, but there would be a shuck pinion mounted there to drive the motion work. So that's the movement for this clock. So here's a Style 3. And the Style 3 movement is virtually identical to that Style 2 movement with a major exception. On the Style 2 movement, silencing the alarm is accomplished by a lever mounted on the case. And the Style 3, silencing the alarm is accomplished by a push-pull piece that is part of the movement. As you can see, the tail that was part of the repeat mechanism has been shortened now and is intercepted by that disc on the staff, to where it's free to swing in this position, and so that would be the alarm position, and then in this position it's forced against one tooth of the alarm escape wheel and doesn't ring. The other notable feature on this movement is there is no repeat. You see the empty holes for the repeat spring, and the empty hole for the repeat lever where the stud would stick through for the spring to press on, and the observation port on the third wheel here for the repeat lever. And of course this movement has no repeat, so that's the difference major between a Style 2 and a Style 3 movement. Moving along to the Style 4 movement, there was another redesign. The idlers are gone. Oh no, we're out of time. No, we're not. Okay. this is set to repeat. Set to repeat. So this is the dwell phase when it doesn't ring. And as the clock runs, that lever is moved up. Should happen about in phase. They're not going to be synced, of course, but you get the idea what's going on. Let it ring one more time. I'll let you, the viewer, figure out what the interval is. Okay. Alright, continuing on. So the major change between the Style 3 and Style 4 is the alarm spring winding arrangement. Here we've got an idler and offset gearing. Here we don't. I think this is a sign of things to come and cheapening of design, because I think this is a design setback, if you will. I think the arrangement of the keys is much better with the idler and the indirect gearing than it is in this example, where it's mounted direct and it's located much closer to the silencing knob and the set knob, so makes it a little bit more difficult to wind that way, in my opinion. So I think this is a step backwards, but that's the difference in the Style 3 and Style 4 movements. Here we have indirect connection between the winding arbor and the where the winding key attaches. A step in the right direction, kind of, is the fact that now both of these keys are female. This is a female key, this is a female key, and they're now interchangeable. If we look on the dial side, we still have the holes for the repeat lever spring, the observation port, and the hole for the pin that sticks out on the repeat lever that presses on the spring. Okay, the change from the Style 4 to the Style 5 movements is pretty subtle. On the back plate, the only difference is the on the clicks. On the Style 4 movement, the click has a tail to make it easier to let the spring down when taking the movement down for servicing. And on the Style 5, the spring, the click is just a stub. On the front of the movement, here we have the shuck pinion in place. Really nice tone on that. Really nice. chuck pinion is in place on this movement. It's not in place on this one, but it would be there to drive the motion work. Okay, so on this movement, the holes for riveting the spring are still there. And now they've gotten around finally to deleting them on this movement. This movement here is date stamped, 1947. There you see it there, June of 47. So this is a post-war movement. I don't remember what the date stamp on this clock is, but this clock has a nickel-plated movement, and we can prove that. Turn it around and open that up and look inside, and you can see the nickel plating in there. I forget what the month is, but this clock is dated 1944. During the war, and as you can see, no nickel plating. Still not bad tone on that clock. Yeah, the movement is not nickel plated, and also the setting knobs and the keys are not nickel plated. And if you look carefully, you'll see that these originally had a black oxide finish on them. I've only seen one other example of a clock like this, and both this clock and the other clock both came from the Tulsa flea market. The other example was purchased sometime after I bought this by a friend of mine, and I serviced it for him. The case was almost perfect. It looked just like it had come out of the box. There was very little wear on the setting knobs and on the winding keys, and they had a very nice black oxide finish. So it's very evident that during the war, the nickel plating was sort of a premium that could not be accommodated. So the nickel plating was dropped, but nickeling was resumed after the war, as this movement bears testimony to. However, moving on to the Style 6, that is something that they would soon remedy, as eventually Westclox themselves decided that nickel plating was a luxury that they could do without. And I've got two Style 6 movements here to show. This one here has no nickel plating at all. And on this one, this example, the front plate is nickel plated. I'm sure the date stamping will confirm that these movements are early and late. Here we have June of 1951. June of 51 on the movement with one nickel-plated movement plate. See, the back plate is brass. And then the movement with no nickel plating at all. Is it a 3 or a 5? May of 1953. Okay, so there you have it. There's another example of the things to come. Movement's becoming less expensively made. Alright, I apologize for not having a complete example of a 2-key Style 7 movement, but here's a Style 7 that is 2 keys. Here's the movement. It's very similar to the Style 6 movement with some minor changes. Most notable of them is, if you look at the barrel bridges here, there's quite a bit less metal. In the Style 7's barrel bridge. Hold them about the same relative positions here. As you can see, a lot less metal. Not a Westclox product, it's a Gilbert. If I had the alarm bridge here, you'd see it's got a lot less metal in it too. So, still a greatly cheapened movement. On the front plate, we still have some artifacts of the Style 1 present. There's our third wheel observation hole. And there's our repeat lever stud hole for the stud that sticks out for the spring to ride on. There's a little change with the Style 6 to the way the alarm trip spring operates. And that was carried over to the Style 7. As you can see now, the motion work gearing on the Style 7 is all blued steel and brass pinions instead of being brass on brass. And there's some additional gearing here to allow the alarm set to be operated as a sweep instead of having its own bit dial for setting. So that is the last quality baby bend movement that Westclox made. These guys don't want to cooperate sometimes, do they? There we go, that's why. Helps to have it turn the right way around, doesn't it? Yeah, this is the last quality movement, in my opinion, that they made. The last of the line. Okay. And then finally, the single key version of the Style 7 movement, which eventually ended up being used as a movement in Big Ben alarm clocks. And then here's a couple examples of this particular movement. You can see there's little variations in the details of them. Here's one where the wheels aren't crossed out. Here's one where the fourth wheel's crossed out, but the third wheel isn't. And this is an earlier example where all the wheels except the great wheel are crossed out. And by crossed out, I mean the wheels are spoked. As you can see, there's 3 spokes to the escape wheel. How's about that? They both rang just within seconds of each other. Although they rang a little late, huh? Who hasn't rung? These guys haven't rung yet? Wow. Yep, the last of the quality line, the setting knob would go on this shaft here. In some form or another, this movement would last us all the way to the end. Okay, care to guess which one? This one. And the way the levers, setting levers work is totally different than the way the setting levers on a Big Ben works. If you try to set them in the same pattern that you would set a Big Ben, you won't get the same results. So that's a subject of a future video, probably. Okay, yeah. Anyway, yada yada yada. Cheap, crappy movements. Yep, that's That's why I cut off on the Style 7s. Okay, so there we go. There's baby bends and their movements. You can see what they look like. Obviously, these are in various states of disrepair. I keep them in these plastic drawers. I'll show you because I have quite a few of these later movements around just for the fun of it, just for demonstrations on why these things became so crappy eventually. So here we go. Here's some of the late ones. All riveted together. These are all newer variations. This would be for a Style 8. The individual time and alarm sets. Had varying degrees of success getting these to run. I don't really consider them to be repairable, and if I can't get them to run, I don't consider it a great loss. All three of these movements I was able to get running. These older ones, the ones that are actually brass. So that should be a pretty good indication of their relative quality. Very nice motion on this one. These Style 6 movements, you see they're pretty dirty, but they've got pretty nice motions. I think the camera is exaggerating that one. This one's running pretty nice. Pretty dirty movement there. Very rarely run these. They spend most of their life in a cabinet. But if I ever, they're nice to have around if I ever come across a nice clock with a nice case, nice dial, but with a really worn out movement or whatever. I can always fix one of these up and swap it in there. These are pretty much untouched. Okay. Well, aren't we still waiting on one, the ring? Okay, there we go. This is going to repeat. Now, I've gone through this when I've shortened the repeat interval to make it more realistic with the length of the mainspring on the alarm. See how short it rings. The way I've normally seen them is they seem to ring for a really long time, and you only get maybe 1 or 2 repeats. So by doing a little bit of adjusting, make it ring for just real short bursts, and that way it'll actually repeat a greater number of repeats. You know, these springs are pretty tiny. You can't get the long rings. Can't get the long rings that you can get out of a Big Ben. And there's quite a bit of gearing on a Big Ben. It's a pretty long mainspring on a Big Ben. Plus, there's an idler gear between the alarm grate wheel and the alarm escape wheel. So. Like I said, notice the setters are different. If I was to go ahead and silence this, you see on a Big Ben, that's the position to have the alarm go off in repeat mode, with the left in the up position and the right in the down position. So on a baby Ben, if you want the alarm to ring and repeat, they've got to both be in the down position like that. And of course, so they're a little different. Alright, well, thank you for watching this video. Please comment, share your thoughts, and we'll probably do another video here soon with some more of these guys, and I'm going to show you how they work, clear up a lot of the misconceptions there are about how these things operate. There seem to be plenty of them. Just look at some of the YouTube videos that eBay sellers are putting up about these things. It's pretty clear they're clueless, and they have no interest in figuring anything out. So, but for the rest of us, that's why this video is here. So, once again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll start where we end this video where we started. Good night.